What would you offer him?
I wouldn't offer him. I'd ask him for a lesson.
To this day, he's the greatest player that's ever played the game.
But Jack is the greatest still. At the age of 60.
Nicklaus was the big name in golf, and that's the one you want to watch.
He was my hero. I started my career, the game of golf, reading his 2 books, right?
To be the best, you had to beat Jack. And that's a real tall order.
He was terrifying, not because of aggression or anger, but because of something far worse. Jack Nicklaus possessed a coldness that turned golf courses into psychological war zones. For 30 years, the greatest players on earth stepped onto the first tee, knowing they were battling more than just a man. They were facing an atmosphere, a force that refused to crack, refused to care, and refused to lose. Arnold Palmer called him the end of an era. Gary Player spent decades trying to outwork him. Lee Trevino threw rubber snakes just to survive. Tom Watson needed perfection to barely edge him. And Greg Norman heard roars that haunted him forever. This is the story of how Jack Nicklaus became the most terrifying competitor in golf history. The Golden Bear did not just win 18 majors, he dismantled opponents from the inside out, forcing them to defeat themselves while he stood silent and stone-faced. He was the machine in an era of artists, and the fear he created changed golf forever. Let's start with the moment that still echoes through golf today. April 1986, Augusta National. Jack Nicklaus was 46 years old. The media had written him off. The new generation had arrived. Greg Norman, the great white shark, was the world #1. Young, powerful, charismatic. Everything golf wanted in its next superstar. Then the Nicklaus roar began. On the back 9 that Sunday, Jack went on a rampage. He eagled 15, birdied 16, birdied 17, a 30 on the back 9 at age 46, and those roars traveled through the Georgia pines like thunder. Norman was playing behind him. He heard every single one. Nick Price, playing alongside Norman, later described the sound as deafening. They could not see what was happening because of the crowd. All they saw was the putter going up in the air. For Norman, this was psychological warfare by sound. He was trying to focus on his own game, but the ghost of the bear was hunting him from ahead. The cheers told him the impossible was unfolding. The old lion had awakened, and when Norman needed par on 18 to force a playoff, he pushed his approach into the gallery. Bogey. Nicklaus wins his 6th green jacket at 46. Norman crumbles. But here is the twist. Later that year at the Open Championship at Turnberry, Norman was leading again, feeling pressure again, and Nicklaus approached him. He told Norman he had been watching him in recent majors and noticed a repeated flaw. Norman was gripping the club too tightly under pressure. Just focus on your grip pressure tomorrow, Nicklaus said. That's it. Norman took the advice, relaxed his grip, won his first major championship. The terror of Nicklaus was complete. He could destroy you with a roar at Augusta, and he could save you with a whisper at Turnberry. He controlled the entire game. Even when he helped you win, he was asserting dominance. The elder sage fixing your flaws because he saw them better than you ever could. But the Nicklaus terror started decades earlier. In 1960, professional golf belonged to Arnold Palmer, the king. Palmer had dragged golf from country clubs to television screens. He was a populist hero with a slashing swing and a hitch in his trousers that sent galleries wild. His relationship with the public was electric. He fed off their adoration. They fed off his visible emotion. Then Jack Nicklaus arrived. Heavyset, crew-cut, stone-faced, a 20-year-old amateur who played with Ben Hogan in the final rounds of the U.S. Open at Cherry Hills. Palmer won that tournament with a legendary final round 65. But Hogan watched Nicklaus and said something chilling. I played 36 holes today with a kid who should have won this thing by 10 shots. For Palmer, this was a warning. The usurper was at the gate, and the usurper played with a plodding, methodical pace that irritated fast-moving Palmer. This clash of tempos became central to their psychological warfare. Palmer wanted engagement, energy, the thrill of battle. Nicklaus refused to participate. He withdrew into a shell of concentration that Palmer found impenetrable. 2 years later came the execution, the 1962 U.S. Open at Oakmont Country Club, Palmer's backyard in western Pennsylvania. The gallery was not just partisan. They were hostile. They heckled the 22-year-old rookie from Ohio relentlessly. They called him Ohio Fats, Fat Jack, Blobbo. They stomped on the ground when he prepared to puke, trying to break his concentration. Nicklaus's father was so enraged he nearly fought spectators in the gallery. The terror Nicklaus inflicted was his absolute refusal to acknowledge the hatred. A lesser player would have crumbled. A more emotional competitor might have lashed out. Nicklaus did neither. He compartmentalized the abuse, treated the venomous shouts as background noise. This ability to isolate himself from his environment terrified Palmer. Palmer relied on crowds to lift him. Nicklaus made crowds irrelevant. In the 18-hole playoff, Nicklaus dismantled Palmer systematically. While Palmer struggled on the lightning-fast greens, three-putting repeatedly, Nicklaus wielded his putter with surgical precision. He shot 71. Palmer shot 74. Nicklaus won his first professional major in Palmer's fortress, and the king's aura of invincibility shattered. He had been beaten by a man who did not care about being loved, only about winning. The rivalry continued, but the dynamic had changed forever. By 1965, Nicklaus won the Masters with a then-record score of of 271, beating Palmer and Player by 9 shots. Bobby Jones watched that week and said Nicklaus played a game with which he was not familiar. This was the terror Palmer felt. He was playing golf. Nicklaus was playing something else entirely, a game of vertical trajectory and power that made classic courses obsolete. What about someone willing to share ideas with you on building better golf strategies? Drop your thoughts in the comments and subscribe to see how these legends shaped the modern game. Now let's talk about Gary Player, the Black Knight from South Africa. Small in stature but massive in determination. Player built his entire career on the idea that hard work could overcome talent gaps. But in Nicklaus, Player found a wall no amount of training could fully scale. Player is credited with bringing fitness to professional golf, but his motivation was fear. Fear of Jack Nicklaus's natural advantages. Nicklaus in his prime was not Fat Jack. He was a powerhouse with massive legs and incredible rotation. Player said Nicklaus looked like Popeye, a physical robustness that let him gouge balls from rough that Player could not move. But Player's deepest insights focus on the mind. Player stated that a strong mind separates the great from the good. He viewed golf as a puzzle without an answer, a constant struggle against chaos. Yet Nicklaus seemed to have solved it. The terror for Player was Nicklaus's consistency. Player traveled millions of miles between continents. He played tired, jet-lagged, hurt. He prided himself on suffering through adversity. Yet when he arrived at majors, Nicklaus was there, rested, prepared, meticulously ready. Player recently ranked the top 3 golfers of all time as Jack Nicklaus, Tiger Woods, and Gary Player. His reasoning is statistical. The stats, he argues, leave no room for interpretation. Nicklaus won 18 majors, but the truly terrifying number is 19. 19 runner-up finishes in majors. That means in 37 major championships, Jack was either the winner or the man you had to beat. He never faded, never disappeared. For Player, who won 9 majors, every victory required overcoming the shadow of the bear. The 1965 Masters widened the gap. Player was defending champion. He played well, but Nicklaus reduced Augusta National to a pitch and putt. His power let him hit short irons into par 5s that Player reached with woods. Nicklaus won by 9. For Player, a man of immense pride, this was devastating. He could not out-hit Jack. He had to outthink, out-putt, and out-hustle him. The mental toll of knowing you are physically outmatched yet refusing to yield defined Player's rivalry with Nicklaus. He fought a war of attrition against a nuclear power. Then there was Lee Trevino, the Merry Mex, a hustler from Texas who grew up in poverty. Trevino stands as one of the few players who psychologically rattled Jack Nicklaus, but deeper analysis reveals his antics were not arrogance. They were desperate survival mechanisms. The 1971 U.S. Open at Marion, the playoff between Nicklaus and Trevino. Tension was thick. Nicklaus was in his prime. Trevino was the chatty underdog. On the first tee, amid crushing silence, Trevino reached into his bag and pulled out a rubber snake. He tossed it at Nicklaus. The gallery gasped. Nicklaus broke into a surprised laugh. This moment is often told as a prank, but Trevino admitted later he was choking so badly he had no choice. He said he could not say he loved golf. He did it as a job. Trevino understood he could not beat Nicklaus in a contest of stoicism. If Nicklaus dictated the emotional tempo with silence and intensity, Trevino would lose. The snake was strategic disruption. It shattered the Nicklaus bubble, forced Jack to engage with absurdity, humanized the machine. Trevino won the playoff 68-71. 1 year later at the Open Championship at Muirfield, Nicklaus was chasing the Grand Slam. He had won the Masters and U.S. Open. He was unstoppable. In the final round, Trevino battled him again. On the par 5 17th, Trevino had made a mess. He was off the green in 4, resigned to bogey or worse. Nicklaus was on the green, poised for birdie and the championship. Trevino mentally checked out, slapped at his chip shot. It went in. The psychological impact on Nicklaus was profound. He was a creature of logic. He calculated odds. The odds of Trevino chipping in were infinitesimal. When it happened, it defied the logic Nicklaus governed his universe by. Shaken, Nicklaus 3-putted for bogey. Trevino won. Trevino later spoke reverently of Nicklaus's fast left shoulder, the biomechanics that let Jack hold the club face square and hit his power fade. He analyzed the machine even as he defeated it. Trevino's constant talking was a shield. By treating the U.S. Open like a Saturday money game, he reduced Nicklaus's intimidation factor. Yet even when Trevino played the golf of his life, hitting miracle chips and throwing rubber snakes, Nicklaus was right there, one shot away, a relentless force that never stopped coming. Trevino noted that Nicklaus finished runner-up to him in 4 major championships. Even when you beat him, he haunted you. As the 70s progressed, the primary challenger shifted to Tom Watson. The relationship between Watson and Nicklaus evolved into deep friendship, but during competition, it was a terrifying test of Watson's worthiness. The 1977 Open Championship at Turnberry is the greatest head-to-head duel in golf history. The duel in the sun. Both men separated completely from the field, turning stroke play into a match play war. The defining moment came on the 16th tee of the final round. Sun baking the Ayrshire coast. Gallery frenzied. Tension unbearable. Watson turned to Nicklaus and said, "This is what it's all about, isn't it?" Nicklaus, eyes fixed on the horizon, replied, "You bet it is." This exchange is legendary for its depth. Nicklaus was confirming the terror, validating the pressure, telling Watson, "Yes, this is the fire. Can you stand stand in it? For Watson, a gap-toothed 20-something from Kansas, this was the ultimate test. He was not just playing a tournament. He was asking the king for permission to wear the crown. Watson won by one shot, shooting 65-65 on the weekend to Nicklaus's 65-66. The margin was razor thin. The terror for Watson was that he played the best golf of his life, broke scoring records, and still only beat Jack by one stroke. Nicklaus never folded, never gave it away. You had to rip the trophy from his hands. 5 years later at Pebble Beach, the dynamic replayed. The 1982 U.S. Open. Nicklaus was in the clubhouse with the lead. Watson stood on the par 3 17th in deep rough, needing birdie. His caddy said, "Get it close." Watson replied, "I'm not going to get it close. I'm going to make it." He chipped in. One of the most famous shots ever. But why did he feel he had to make it? Because Jack was in the clubhouse. Watson knew par might lead to a playoff, and a playoff with Nicklaus was a death sentence. The presence of the bear forced Watson to attempt the impossible. Watson later reflected that Nicklaus was the benchmark for greatness. He admitted watching VHS tapes of Nicklaus obsessively, studying his natural swinging power. To be the best, Watson had to internalize Nicklaus's game, the high ball flight, the discipline, the refusal to yield. The terror Watson faced was different. It was the terror of the mirror. Watson was the closest thing to a Nicklaus clone. Midwestern, intelligent, gritty. Beating Jack was like beating the idealized version of himself. Through every rivalry, Nicklaus built his dominance on specific pillars. The concept of playing for second place originated with him, not Tiger Woods. Opponents saw Nicklaus on the leaderboard and subconsciously resigned to runner-up. This was deliberate. Nicklaus famously said he never missed a putt in his mind. He had terrifying ability to ignore noise. He stated he could not control Palmer, Player, Watson, or Trevino. The only person he could control was himself. This solipsism was his armor. By refusing to engage emotionally with rivals, he denied them validation. He did not care if they played well. He assumed he would play better. Nicklaus even physicalized his philosophy through course design. The bear trap at PGA National is holes 15, 16, and 17. A plaque reads it should be all about guts and glory. The holes demand high, soft iron shots, his specialty, and punish hesitation with water. He designed courses to test mental fortitude just as he tested players in majors. The terror of the bear trap is the terror of Jack Nicklaus. One mistake and you are dead. Even his sportsmanship was intimidation. The 1969 Ryder Cup concession. On the final green with matches tied, Nicklaus conceded a 2-foot putt to Tony Jacklin, ensuring a draw. While praised as supreme sportsmanship, it was also supreme confidence. By giving the putt, Nicklaus told Jacklin, "I am not afraid of you making this. I am bigger than the result." He controlled the narrative, decided the outcome. Even in kindness, Nicklaus asserted authority. He denied Jacklin the chance to miss, but also denied him the chance to win outright. The benevolent dictator granting mercy, a power move in itself. Gary Player said golf is a puzzle without an answer. For 30 years, Jack Nicklaus was the closest thing to a solution the game had seen. The terror he inspired was not fear of physical harm. It was profound existential dread. He took the kingdom from Palmer by ignoring the people who loved him. He outlasted Player by refusing to acknowledge fatigue. He silenced Trevino's jokes by winning, even when the jester performed miracles. He mentored Watson while battling him to the death. He haunted Norman with roars echoing through pines. The Nicklaus terror was a product of silence, preparation, and absolute belief in his own inevitability. He did not play the opponent, he played the course, and in doing so, crushed the opponent. As he once noted, as soon as he heard a player talking negative about the course, he wrote them off. He had won before the first tee shot was struck. To his rivals, the Golden Bear was not just a man. He was the standard, the benchmark, the shadow covering the entire world of golf. For 30 years, the greatest players on earth believed they were playing for second place because Jack Nicklaus had already claimed first, and nothing they did could shake that terrifying certainty.